All right, welcome to our next episode of Legacy Lessons with Jack and Chan, where our goal is to provide you education, inspiration, information over a little bit of conversation. So let's go.
When all the heads in the house turn towards the door, and all the men's jaws drop to the floor, it's nothing to me, it's just how I roll. People on the dance floor starting to jump, and all their little hearts going thump, thump, thump. Nothing special to me, that's just how I roll.
All right, welcome back to Legacy Lessons with Jack and Chan. Today, we are going to dig into one of my favorite topics, and a topic that really is near and dear to my heart, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. But before we go there, we've been here in lovely Las Vegas. And for those of you, to my listener, to you, my listener, that has not maybe heard my story, I've shared this before where as a little girl, I used to come out here a lot with my parents. And there was a comedian back in the day. His name was Red Fox. Now, mind you, I was a little too young to be seeing Red Fox. But my mom and my dad loved Red Fox, and they would figure out how to sneak me in so they could see Red Fox. And, for those of you from the 80s era, you know who I'm talking about. He was just a hoot. So, it's funny because I was thinking about that, Dr. Chan, and just what Vegas was back in the 80s, right? It really was just a place where you came for some entertainment, some good $5 buy one, get one free buffets, and, of course, for gambling. And so, I don't want to get into gambling. That would not be appropriate for this conversation. But, think about, it's 2024. Vegas has been changing over the years. I was just sharing with my mom, I said, you got Super Bowl, right? You got a football stadium here now. You got the basketball stadium, baseball, NASCAR. I mean, what's going on in Vegas, and why are they becoming even, more of adding all these sports teams here? What's up?
Jack, they're taking advantage of the most important principle in investment, and that is diversification.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that is one of the things that you're seeing in Vegas. They're diversifying across different types of investments and activities. And that's exactly what everyone listening today needs to do in order to be successful.
That's right. Yeah, no, I love what you just said. I remember when I first heard about them bringing these sports teams to Las Vegas, because again, I've been here, I've been coming here for 40 plus years, and this is really all new. And to your point, they wanted to keep some of the economy here through Monday morning, because a lot of times when people would come to Vegas, they would leave on a Sunday, just come in. But when you got the football team here, and of course Monday Night Football or Sunday football, you get to keep that money here until at least Tuesday morning, right?
That's right.
Versus Sunday. And so, so more industries, more ability to spend money. What else? I mean, you mentioned diversification, and I know we're going to talk about that, but I feel like there's something else that's going on too.
Well, I think the world is moving quickly, and I think to continue to capture the attention of people, you really have to offer different things. Yeah. And so you're seeing this, by the way, all around the world. Yeah. I mean, if you just go to the Middle East, many years ago, all they did was produce oil. And now when you go to some of these countries, you go to Dubai, you go to the United Arab Emirates, you'll see that they're diversifying into other different industries. And this is, again, the principle why, as an investor, you have to have exposure to different industries, because that is the way that you're going to generate much higher rates of return with lower risk. That's something that cities are learning, something that countries are learning, and something that we all should learn from too.
Absolutely. And the thing I also think about as we think about this conversation and concept of diversification and diversity, and what Vegas has really done over the last 30 years to really hedge its bet. and to keep the money flowing and to keep it coming in. I mean, Vegas looks much different than even Atlantic City, right? It looks different than some other places. But to that same vein, it lends me into our conversation today about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but diversity more so from a human capital standpoint, and taking almost that same lens that Vegas has taken to really hedge its bet, no pun intended, right? Or pun intended, I don't know how it goes. But really taking that lens, and I'm sure there were potentially people at the table that brought certain ideas that said, we need to start thinking strategically. We need to start thinking about how to keep Vegas on the map. And so let's talk, what does that mean in the everyday environment, right? As we think about our everyday lives. You live in New York City. I split my time between Chicago and Detroit. Very, very diverse areas in this country. So let's start by just talking about the concept. It's legacy lessons. Let's educate our audience on what is diversity, what is equity, and what is inclusion. So what is diversity in your meaning?
To me, diversity is to be able to be exposed to different ideas, different cultures, and benefit from all of them.
Yeah.
Is in our polarized world, the term diversity is sort of getting sort of a bad name. But the reality is that when you're investing, you want to diversify. So why not do that with human beings? A very interesting study that came out from the Harvard Business Review, authored by Michaels, Murphy, and Van Karsetan, found that when you have diversity and you also have inclusion, that the shareholder rate of return actually is much higher. And the reason for that is not just because you have people that look different on the boardroom table, but rather because you have different ideas, irrespective of how people look.
That's right.
So if you sort of restrict your ideas, you restrict the number of cultures that you allow to basically participate in the process. I'm not surprised that these studies find that the shareholder rate of return is much lower. So it's not just about doing the right thing. It's about also doing optimizing the rates of return for the investors and for the company. And that's one of the reasons why many company CEOs have said they are going to abide by the law, but they're always going to continue to look for a diversity of thoughts and diversity of participation, because it makes business sense.
Absolutely. You bring up such a good point, because again, diversity, we talk about it in our industry as it relates to asset classes, but then it seems to now be this really, very, negative word, for lack of better words, that we're having to really help people to understand that it's a good thing. It should not feel like this is something that we should avoid. Let's talk about it. Let's unpack it and make sure that people understand the importance of it. And so for me, when I think about diversity, I grew up in a very, very diverse neighborhood. My mother, we grew up in an area called Southfield, Michigan. And Southfield was just a melting pot of diverse backgrounds. I mean, we had people from the Middle East, from Poland, from Spain. I mean, we were one of 3 Black families on that particular block at that time. And so just as a little girl, that's just what I knew. My whole neighborhood was a melting pot of people from probably 50 different countries and cultures. And so I was very blessed to then be raised in an environment where if I wanted to understand the Asian culture or the Jewish culture or the Muslim faith, they were all on my street. All of them. And, there were times where they would go back to their homeland and invite me. And how cool is that? Because what it did was it introduced me to a whole nother world of living, of eating, of, even praising, that, had I just been in my own sort of bubble shelter, I would have never been exposed to. And it also helped me be a much better friend, a better leader throughout my career. And it also helped me be more savvy, even as an investor. So I'd love to, hear your story around like how you grew up. Was it diverse? Like, what was your story?
Well, growing up in New York City, you could not avoid diversity. In fact, we embraced it. I always remember growing up as a kid and watching David Letterman say that one of the benefits he liked about New York City is that in the same block, there could be 7 different nationalities telling you where you could go if you were not doing the right thing in different languages in the same block. And that's not an exaggeration. In fact, in New York City, we have close to 60% of the people that are living there actually were born outside of the United States. So you can't get more diverse than that.
Right.
And so I think that that's a benefit that we all have if we can be exposed to something like that. Because as you said in your experience, Jack, it really opens up your eyes to look at the world a little bit different.
That's right.
And so diversity needs to be thought of as a benefit, not as something that is a cost or something negative. It's a benefit.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, when I think about diversity, I think about experiences. I think about thoughts. I think about culture. I think about the things that, for example, I'm sure that there were things that you went through that I would have never gone through just because we come from 2 different backgrounds. But bring us together in the same room and we'd have 2 powerful ideas, we could change the world. And so that to me is what really empowers, me in this conversation, and why for almost 30 years of my professional life, I've been an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just because, it's the cool thing to do or because I'm a minority woman in this business. I mean, sure, that's one of the things I'm fighting for because I don't naturally see women that look like me on a regular basis. And so it's definitely something I want, to and open up more eyes to say, hey, this is a career that's available, so my job is to hopefully represent, my culture in a way that's helpful and hopefully going to establish a presence. But really when we think about that, I want to dig into the term equity as well, right? So we talk about DE&I, let's define equity. So in your mind, what is equity?
Well, I think equity means giving everybody a fair shot, because it doesn't matter what whether you're male or female, whether you are of a different nationality. It is what America stands for, to give everybody that opportunity. And for many years, we didn't do that. And to some extent, we're still struggling with it.
Yeah.
So I think that giving everybody a fair shot is the way to go, because otherwise, guess what happens? All of a sudden, people get demotivated.
Yeah.
There's anger, there's resentment, and before you know it, we're not working together.
Yeah.
So we need to have it.
Absolutely. I mean, when I think about equity, especially, as say a Black woman, the stats show that, we're paid 60 cents on every dollar, say, of our white male colleagues that are in the same exact job. And many of us, are potentially single parents, and we're taking care of our parents and we're taking care of kids. So you can imagine the earnings potential now has drastically shrinked. And so when I think of equity, I also think of, am I properly compensated? Am I being compensated, fairly based on the work and the performance? That's one. And then the other thing I'm going to look at as it relates to equity, and this conversation comes up even in certain neighborhoods, is my home valued as the same as my, my colleagues, right? So equity takes many forms, and it's, if equity is not at par, it can hold you back financially. If I'm not making the same money as my colleagues, if my assets aren't valued, but yet I have the same assets and I'm doing the same job, but yet I'm only able to really capture 60% of that, it takes me that much further to play catch up. Right. And so that's why that equity piece is really important to me. So let's talk inclusion, right? So we hear the term inclusion. I want to define, what does inclusion mean? So when you hear the word inclusion, what does that mean to you?
Well, inclusion to me means allowing everybody a seat on the table. And for me, it's important because for many years, women didn't have that opportunity to be included.
Yeah.
I have 3 daughters, and I want to work hard to making sure that they get a fair shot. I grew up in a very humble, low-income housing project where we had Hispanics, we had African Americans. Half of my heritage is Asian, which at one point or another they had challenges. Things have gotten a little bit better. Half of my family is African American. I hear daily all the challenges that half of my family is going through. So I really want all of us to really work hard to make sure that inclusion is not something we have to worry about.
That's right.
I wish, Jack, that I could tell everyone out there that inclusion is not something we have to worry about. But that's exactly why we have to emphasize it, so that someday in a future generation, we don't have to talk about inclusion anymore. It's already done.
It's already done. No, I appreciate that. It's inclusion is so important because as I think about my journey as a professional in this space, if it wasn't for people like you, people like some of the mentors that we've shared, that included me in on conversations or included me in on, she should be the one for that job. Let's include Jackie on that talent, list. Then, where would I be, right? So not only is inclusion important, but having sponsors and people at the table that, have the authority to be able to say, I recognize talent and I want to make sure I'm doing my part to be inclusive in that. And I think inclusive, the other thing that I think about when I think about inclusion, especially as I think about our next generation, which we know is so important, is, including them in conversations, not thinking that they aren't prepared or ready or, have enough experience. And so I never want to assume with our next generation. And so, I'm doing something right now where I include my almost 15-year-old son in conversations about taxes and conversations about estate planning. So what I mean with inclusion, it doesn't just necessarily mean race or I think when we think DEI is automatically just subconsciously people jump to race. No, that's not about race. It's about making sure that we are including different thoughts at the table, different ideas. My 14-year-old is learning more at his high school than I learned in college, right?
And that's a good thing.
And that's a great thing, right? So being able to have conversations at the family table that includes grandma, uncle, auntie, daughter, son, that's what's going to change the world when we start talking to one another and communicating. So inclusion can take many different parts, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I want to share a story because, again, I mentioned DE&I is one of those subjects that's very, very near and dear to me. And, one of the reasons, one of my day jobs, is founder and CEO of Alexander Legacy Private Wealth Management. And we just celebrated our 3rd year in business.
Congratulations.
Which, yes, I'm so, so grateful for. And I'll tell you that, when I think about why we launched Alexander Legacy Private Wealth Management, I think about creating a platform for, people that were underrepresented, that were underserved. And, being this unique, say, voice in this industry, this unique face in this industry, this unique experienced professional in this industry, I knew at some point it was time for me to, I like to say, go on my Noah mission. And for my listeners who don't understand what I mean by that, Noah from the Bible, was sent on a mission, right? And that mission was to go build an ark because there was a flood coming. And no one believed that the flood was coming. They laughed, but Noah had to be obedient. And no matter how hard it was, he had to build that ark. And he had to go and get one of every single kind of animal, right? And deliver them on that ark. Because at some point, that flood came. And it came and it lasted for a long time. And so I say all that to say 3 years ago, actually 4 years ago, I had a vision. And sometimes visions aren't so happy. My vision was a flood. My vision was the attack that we're seeing on DE&I right now. And it scared me. It didn't scare me for me, but it scared me for all of those people that this is going to hurt for no reason. Because it's what we talked about. It's like an attack against race versus really the underbelly of what we just described DE&I to really mean. Diversity of thought, of mind, of background, culture. And so I said, I just can't sit here and wait on the sidelines. I got to do something about it. So with no book of business and with literally the clothes on my back and the money in my bank account, I started a firm. And I said, it may take 3 or 4 years before, before I start to really see some real activity. But I want to be in position to help and to serve the people that I know deserve to have the same type of access that many of our brothers and sisters have been able to be afforded in this country. So I'm here. The wealth management industry is not getting smaller. Everything that we see, the wealth transfer over the next 10 years is to the tune of, I don't know, you help me out here, something in the trillions, right? Especially as we think about the wealth that's going to be transferring from the boomers to the next gen, to the millennials, and especially wealth that's going to be transferring to more diverse people in this country. So as I think about this arc, otherwise known as Alexander Legacy Private Wealth Management, it was a dream, but it was a dream to fulfill a mission. You know how some people have dreams of buying fancy cars and living in big fancy homes and traveling the world, and those are fun. We help clients get there. I like that too. Mm-hmm. But my dream is a little bit different. My dream was about fulfilling a mission. And the mission was to make sure that we can close this wealth gap, and not only close the wealth gap, but get trusted financial education and advice out to any and everybody who will receive it. Because if we get good financial education, I'm here to tell you firsthand, Dr. Chan, you can really change your life.
Yes, it will.
You really can. And so, if more people took the time to be educated, we could have better health care, better education, and we could truly feel free in our minds. And I felt like it was my responsibility to take that leap of faith and to say, I got to create a platform where advisors and where investors who have been underrepresented have a safe place. I have clients who are going through divorce, going through mental issues, whatever. They know they have a safe, confidential place in me, but they also know that I care. I'm team no lip service. So anybody who's followed me for my 31 years knows when I walk, I talk the talk. I walk the walk and I talk the talk. Or did I say that right? When I talk the talk, but I'm also going to walk the walk, and I'm not afraid to put my money where my mouth is. And so that's what I'm really hoping, that this venture that I'm on, this mission that we're on now together, that we're able to help people get access so that we can help change lives and help people create multi-generational wealth. And to me, that's the topic at hand.
And hopefully we'll inspire others to do the same, to make this a bigger project. And before you know it, it becomes reality.
That's right. I want to talk about this. It was in the news recently, right? Our former chairman, Jamie Dimon, actually had a great article in AOL, and it actually spread like wildfire regarding his stance on this topic on DE. And I would love to hear your thoughts around that.
Well, I was very encouraged because one of the things he said was that he realized that the tide was shifting in the other direction, but he felt very strongly, like we do, that this diversity of thought and the diversity of people in the job environment actually benefits. Studies have shown that it actually generates higher profits, higher shareholder rates of return. And so even though he was not going to sort of go against the law, he was going to do everything in his power to continue to promote that agenda within the confines of the law, which means that not only him, but other CEOs can also join in the campaign and do the right thing. And by doing the right thing, they're going to do the right thing by their shareholders.
Absolutely.
And that's the bottom line.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think they had a really good year from what I understood.
Yes, they did.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, numbers don't lie. But I think, again, the bigger assignment here, which I believe I'm on, is to really open up the doors and the eyes and the ears and the platform for people who are willing and able to really understand. I'm ready to unpack this topic with you all. We're ready to unpack this topic. This country is becoming more diverse. We have to accept that diverse has nothing to do with my skin tone. Diverse has everything to do with what I bring to the table.
Right.
I bring 31 years of financial services to the table, right? Did that have anything to do with my color or my gender, right? I tell a story a lot of times. You mentioned how you grew up, and it's so funny, Dr. Chan. A lot of times, I think people assume that because I'm a Black woman that I grew up in a poor neighborhood. They just kind of make that assumption. I literally get that 90% of the time, and I feel bad, but I almost have to chuckle because I'm like, well, let me tell you my story. I said, to be honest with you, when I grew, my mother graduated with her master's. We lived in the suburbs. I had a swimming pool in my backyard with a slide and a jacuzzi. We had not one, not two, but 3 cars. One of them happened to be a Mercedes-Benz. We had 4 businesses. We had 3 homes. And that's why I was coming out to Vegas.
That's right.
My mother is 2nd generation. My grandfather owned tons of acres of land in Indiana. He owned 7 churches. He was the man of the hour in Indiana. And so my mother is now the steward of the family's wealth. I'm just trying to just be on the good side and do my part. But I say all that to say that's really not normal for, when you see someone that looks like me, because again, normally the stories are a little bit different. And so I'm also here to share that, not because I'm trying to no, it's to be able to help my audience, our friends who are listening, to understand that we all come from different backgrounds.
That's right.
Right, you shared that you grew up in the housing projects.
I grew up, we basically complement each other because unlike Jack, I grew up in very humble beginnings. Right. My mother cleaned office buildings. My dad was a waiter. We were at the lowest end of the income stream. I was the first person in my family to graduate from high school, the first person in my family to graduate from college, first person in my family to get a master's degree, first person in my family to get a PhD. At one point, my family members were saying, we're not sure he's smart. We just think he doesn't want to work. And that's why he continues to stay in school. But the reality is that was my ticket.
That's right.
And so whether you start at the bottom or whether you start somewhere midway, doing the right thing like Jack is striving to do is all that matters. And that's why I join wholeheartedly in the effort to make things right with Jack. Together.
Hey, let's do this. All right. That is so awesome. So again, diversity of thoughts, of ideas, collaborating for the bigger mission. I mean, this is what it's all about. So in closing, I feel like we need to give some inspiration. I mean, this whole conversation was inspirational. So Dr. Chen, if you were to take one thing away from this conversation, because we unpacked a lot. We did. And I'm so grateful for you. But, we got to go out here and we got to press this mission forward. So if you were to take one thing away from this, what would that be?
I think the thing I take away with is listen to Jack's story. You've heard my story. But one of the things that I want everybody to go away with is not so much my story or Jack's story, but rather, what are we trying to accomplish? We're trying to accomplish, we want to democratize wealth. We want to democratize education. And we want you to join us in helping others be able to also participate in this process. And so the thing to take away is, it doesn't matter where you started. It matters where you end up. And not everybody is on a path to the place where they're going to be comfortable for themselves and for their family. And hopefully you'll take our stories, Jack's story and my story, and it'll inspire you to help others. And also, it'll inspire you to move in that direction. And we're here to help you get there. And after we help you, we want you to help others achieve the same thing.
Absolutely. Thank you again for joining another episode of Legacy Lessons with Jack and Chan, where our goal is to provide you education, inspiration, information over a little bit of conversation. God bless.